When Ibrahim Traoré attends a celebrity charity concert, a famous singer decides to poke fun at him in front of the crowd. Laughter echoes, but what happens next stuns everyone. With a microphone in hand and courage in his heart, Traoré steps onto the stage. His unexpected voice and message silence not just the crowd, but the entire internet. This powerful moment is proof that real respect is earned in the most unexpected ways. It started on a quiet Tuesday morning in Ouagadougou. President Ibrahim Traoré was in his modest office going through a report on education for displaced children. His phone buzzed with a message from his assistant. "You've been invited to the Africa Ita charity concert. It's a celebrity event, high-profile logos Friday night." He raised an eyebrow. A celebrity concert that wasn't his usual scene, but the concert was raising funds for West African refugees, a cause dear to his heart. After a short pause, he nodded. "Tell them I'll attend quietly." By Thursday evening, he boarded a commercial flight, no presidential jet, no red carpet, just Ibrahim Traoré in a plain suit, sitting next to ordinary passengers. The news didn't make headlines. Nobody really noticed him arrive in Lagos, but the concert organizers, they were shocked he said yes. And the celebrities, they didn't all take it well. One in particular, Dio Blaze, a famous Afrobeat superstar with millions of followers, saw Trout's attendance as a publicity stunt. He leaned toward his manager backstage and whispered, "Let's give the president something to remember. Let's roast him a little." He didn't know, none of them did, how much this night would change everything. The concert hall was a dazzling blur of lights and color. Celebrities, influencers, dancers, and cameras filled the air with energy. The crowd of over 30,000 people roared with excitement as stars performed hit after hit. President Ibrahim Traoré sat quietly in the front row, surrounded by a few security personnel in plain clothes. No one expected much from him. He clapped, smiled politely, and stayed humble. A few people whispered and pointed, wondering why a head of state was here without the usual fanfare. Then Dio Blaze stepped onto the stage. The crowd went wild. He strutted across the platform mic, in hand, sunglasses flashing. After his third song, he paused, wiped his forehead dramatically, and grinned. "We've got a special guest tonight," Dio said, and the cameras zoomed in on Traoré's face. The crowd turned to look. "Make some noise for the president of, hold on, what's the country again? Burkina Burrito." Laughter erupted. Traoré smiled faintly. "Calm still. No offense, Your Excellency. You're doing great. I mean, real presidents don't fly economy, right?" The crowd laughed harder. A few winced, but Ibrahim didn't flinch. Instead, he slowly stood up. And then something no one expected happened. He started walking toward the stage. The hall went silent. Even Dio Blaze stepped back confused. Was the president walking toward him? Ibrahim Traoré moved with quiet strength. He wasn't angry. He wasn't smiling either. Just calm, like a man who had walked through storms and now faced only rain. The crowd held their breath. An event coordinator rushed toward him, whispering, "Mr. President, please, you don't have to." He gently placed a hand on the coordinator's shoulder and whispered, "It's all right." When he reached the stage, Dio hesitated before handing him the mic, unsure if this was a joke. Traoré took it. He turned to face the crowd. His voice, when he spoke, was low, but clear. Every word pierced through the air like truth itself. "I didn't come here for applause," he said, "or to be treated special. I came here because children across this continent are starving. Families are running from war. And this stage, this music, has the power to bring people together, not tear them apart." The crowd fell silent. Cameras zoomed in. Phones came out. Some people already had tears in their eyes, and he hadn't even started the real story yet. "Let me tell you something, Ritistio," he said, raising the mic again, "about a little boy I met in a refugee camp just 3 days ago." Traoré's voice held steady as he told the crowd, "3 days ago, I visited a refugee camp on the border between Burkina Faso and Mali. There, I met a boy named Mahamudo. He was no older than 10. A quiet gasp spread through the audience. The lights dimmed slightly, and the huge screen behind the stage showed a photo. A small boy in tattered clothes, dusty feet, and tired eyes, but holding a stick like it was a sword. He had no shoes, no parents. He told me, 'President, I want to be a doctor. I want to fix people like they fix bicycles.'" A soft laugh mixed with a sniffle. But he had no school, no food, just hope. I sat with him on the bare ground and asked what keeps him going. Traoré paused. He said, "Because someone has to care." The stadium was dead silent. "That's why I came here, not to be joked about, not to be praised, but because of a barefoot boy who still believes someone cares. And if I can stand here, so can he. One day he will." The crowd, celebrities included, began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Something was changing in the room. Dio Blaze stood at the edge of the stage, suddenly very small in the spotlight. He stared at Ibrahim Traoré, not knowing what to say. The crowd no longer looked at Dio with excitement. They looked at him like he owed them an apology. Traoré turned slightly toward him. "You're a talented man," he said gently. "Your voice reaches millions. Use it to lift the broken, not laugh at them." It wasn't angry, it wasn't bitter. It was just true. Dio's throat tightened, something inside him cracked. He lowered his mic, stepped back, and disappeared into the curtain. No music played, no lights danced, just quiet. Traoré handed the mic back to the crew and began to leave the stage, but before he reached the stairs, something unexpected happened. The crowd stood up one row, then another, until the entire stadium was on its feet, clapping, crying, shouting his name, "Traoré, Traoré, Tro." Phones were raised high. Live streams flooded social media. The internet lit up. But Ibrahim didn't wave or smile. He just bowed his head, because for him, this wasn't a performance, it was a mission, and it wasn't over. The night, Traoré refused the black SUV the organizers offered him. "No, thank you," he said. "I'll ride with the medical staff." He sat in the back of a dusty white van with two young doctors who volunteered at refugee camps. The roads were bumpy and the air was hot, but they spoke deeply about healing wounds that medicine couldn't reach. Meanwhile, back at the venue, the world exploded. Clips of Trey's speech went viral on Twitter, on TikTok, on YouTube. Every platform was ablaze with hashtags like "Respect Trey," "Voice of Africa," and "Mahamudu Dreams." Celebrities who mocked him now tweeted in shame. Famous influencers cried in reaction videos. And Dio Blaze, he posted a single story. "I was wrong. I've never felt smaller, forgive me." But Traoré didn't care about the internet. He was already on the road again, heading to another village, another camp, another forgotten place. Because he knew the truth. Real change doesn't happen on stages. It happens in silence, in dirt, in places where cameras never go. And the week had only just begun. By Saturday morning, Traoré was already at the edge of Burkina Faso, visiting a rural hospital near the border. The building had cracked walls and only one working fan. The air smelled of dust and medicine. He greeted every nurse by name. A small girl, barely 5, lay on a bed, breathing heavily. Her name was Esau. She had malaria, but there were no more IV drips. The nurse whispered, "We ran out yesterday. The supply truck is stuck in the mud 30 kilometers away." Traoré didn't wait. He rolled up his sleeves, picked up a shovel, and joined local workers to dig out the truck. No cameras, no news crew, just sweat, mud, and purpose. 4 hours later, the IV bags arrived. Isatu's breathing steadied. But what no one knew was that a local boy had filmed the whole thing. He uploaded it to YouTube with the caption, "Our president digs for children. What does yours do?" It spread like wildfire. Suddenly, journalists, influencers, even world leaders were asking, "Who is this man?" But Traoré still hadn't checked his phone. He was holding Isatu's hand, humming her a song his mother once sang to him. That night, a call came through to the presidential hotline in Ouagadougou. It was from the United Nations. "We'd like to nominate President Ibrahim Traoré for the Global Humanitarian Peace Award." His assistant paused. "He's not here. Where is he?" The assistant looked down at the GPS tracker. It showed a dot deep in a forest village. "He's building a classroom." While the world was buzzing with talk shows and breaking news, Traoré was laying bricks with volunteers in a village called Kuruma. The old school had been torn apart by rains. Children watched him from the trees, shocked that a president would lift cement blocks or mix mud. One child walked up and asked, "Are you the real president?" Traoré smiled. "If I weren't, would I have these blisters?" The boy giggled. By now, African news networks had started to follow his every move, but he never made a single speech. He just kept working, because for him, leadership wasn't about being seen. It was about showing up, even when no one's watching. And that's when the rain started to fall, heavy, soaking, drenching. But Ibrahim kept building. Rain poured through the village like a flood, but no one left the school site. Traoré stood in the mud, soaked to the skin, still helping the workers fit the final classroom door. No umbrella, no guard, just him. Wet, shivering, determined. The villagers brought towels and hot porridge, insisting he rest. He only accepted when a grandmother tugged his hand, whispering, "You remind me of my son who died in the war." He never gave up either. She wrapped a scarf around his shoulders and cried quietly. So did her granddaughter. By morning, the rain had cleared, and the school, it stood complete. Children danced in the mud. Teachers hugged each other. Traoré raised the chalkboard with his own hands, and someone painted on the wall, "Built by the people with their president." As the sun rose, a news drone sent by a Pan-African channel hovered above and captured it all. That footage hit millions within hours. The world was no longer asking who Ibrahim Traoré was. They were asking, why aren't more leaders like him? And back in Lagos, Dio Blaze was packing his bags. He needed to see the president with his own eyes. Dio Blaze hadn't slept. He watched every clip of Traoré, from the concert to the hospital to the school. And each time he wiped tears from his eyes, tears of guilt, of awakening. "I mocked this man," he whispered in the mirror, "and he built a school in the rain." The next morning, Dio booked a flight to Ouagadougou. No entourage, no manager, no bodyguards, just a backpack, a notebook, and his guilt. He arrived quietly, no media, no press. He asked locals where Traoré had gone next. A market woman pointed toward a dusty road. "Try the village of Sapon," she said. "They say he's visiting the widows there." As Dio rode a crowded bus through red clay paths, he wrote in his notebook, "I once filled stadiums with noise, but this man fills empty homes with light." By the time he reached Sapon, the sun was setting, and there under a tree surrounded by old women with sun-wrinkled faces sat President Ibrahim Traoré, helping repair a broken water pump with his bare hands. Dios couldn't move. His heart felt heavier than it ever had before. The sun dipped low in the sky. The air smelled of earth and smoke. One of the widows, Mama Salamata, sat beside Traoré and hummed a song. Her voice was soft, but carried deep sorrow. When Dio stepped closer, she looked at him with wet eyes and said, "I lost my husband to bandits. He was protecting our crops. They shot him while I was cooking dinner." Traoré listened, head bowed. She continued, "For years no leader came to see us. No one cared, but you sat in our broken bench and asked how we were. I'll never forget that." Dio swallowed hard. His lips trembled. He slowly approached Traoré and knelt in the dirt beside him. "Mr. President," he said, "I came to apologize. I spoke without knowing your heart." Traoré looked into his eyes, then at the women around them. "Then listen now," he said, "not to me but to them." That night under the stars, the widows sang songs of loss, of love, of children gone, and fields abandoned, and Dio, the famous singer, for the first time in his life, just listened. Tears streamed down his face. This was the real music. The night sky sparkled above the village of Sapon. Traoré stood beside a small fire, hands stained from repairs, eyes heavy from the day's work. Dio Blaze remained seated, humbled, changed. Around them villagers gathered, sharing stories, tea and tears. A young boy, no older than 7, tapped Dio's shoulder. "Will you sing for us?" Dio hesitated. Tor placed a hand on his shoulder, seeing something real, something for them. Dio took a deep breath and stood. He didn't sing one of his hits. He sang a lullaby his grandmother once sang to him, voice cracking with every line. The crowd closed their eyes. Some began to hum. Some wept. When the last note faded, silence wrapped around them like a blanket. Trao stepped forward. "Tomorrow, we build a well here," he announced softly. "No woman here should carry water from miles away again." Cheers broke out, and then Dia whispered, "Let me fund it, all of it." The crowd gasped. Traoré smiled, not because of the money, but because a heart had been changed. That night, 2 men, one a president, one a performer, sat under the stars, and something greater than fame was born. By Tuesday morning, news had spread across Burkina Faso. Children waited at village edges, hoping to catch a glimpse of the man who didn't act like a president, but like a father, brother, builder. In a dusty village named Zunuogo, a girl named Miriam stood quietly outside her collapsed classroom. Her uniform was torn. In her hands was a worn notebook, its pages thin like onion skin. Traoré noticed her immediately. "Why aren't you in school, little one?" he asked gently. She looked down. "Our school fell last year. We just sit on stones and wait for the rain to stop." Traoré knelt beside her and took the notebook. On its last page was a drawing of a house with children inside and a flag flying above it. "This is my dream school." Mayam said something. In her voice cracked Dio's heart in half. That afternoon, without any press, Traoré and Dio brought villagers together. By sundown, shovels were in hand, and the first bricks of Miriam's dream school were laid. She hugged Traoré tightly. "Will you come when it's finished?" He smiled. "I'll come before it is, and I'll sit with you in the front row." That night, while the villagers danced around the campfire, Dio noticed something unusual, an old scar on Traoré's wrist. "What happened there?" he asked quietly. Traoré hesitated, then replied, "When I was 10, my village was attacked. My brother hid me in a grain bin before running out to distract the fighters. He never came back." The firelight reflected in Dio's eyes. "You were just a child, yes, but I remember thinking, if I survive this, I'll protect others the way he protected me." Silence fell between them. Dio looked away, eyes wet. "Everything I've done, it's been for applause, but you walk through pain and still carry others." Traoré stared into the flames. "No man chooses his scars, but we can choose what they mean." The children nearby had fallen asleep, with empty bowls beside them. Traoré stood and began quietly handing out food from a pot he had asked to be cooked earlier. He didn't make announcements, he didn't need to. And far away in cities, with bright lights and tall towers, millions were watching online, crying, not because of pity, but because they saw something pure, a leader, with a scar and a heart. Just as dawn touched the village roofs, a soldier rushed to Traoré with a sealed envelope. The handwriting was shaky but familiar. It was from his mother. He opened it slowly. "My son, the world now sees what I've always known. When your father died, I feared you'd be angry forever, but you became kind instead. That is your real strength. I miss you. Please eat well. Your brother would be proud, Mama." Traoré folded the letter fully and pressed it to his chest. He didn't speak for a long time. Stianimo gently asked, "Do you miss home?" Traoré replied, voice low, "I carry it with me everywhere I go." Yes, then something strange happened. One of the widows who had followed them from Sapune began singing softly. Soon others joined a lullaby, the same one his mother used to sing. And as the song floated into the air, Traoré closed his eyes. He was no longer just a president. He was a son, a brother, a friend, a man whose love for his people went deeper than titles. And every phone recording him that morning caught not just a man, but a soul. By Wednesday evening, the convoy returned to the capital. The concert that started it all was about to resume, this time with a second charity event, arranged last minute, now titled Voices of Change. The stadium was full, phones were raised, but this time people weren't waiting for singers, they were waiting for him. Backstage, the same celebrity who mocked Traoré days earlier waited nervously when Traoré entered. He stood up. "I was wrong," the singer said quietly, eyes down. Traoré placed a hand on his shoulder. "You gave me a stage. That's all I needed." Then the president stepped forward. No guards, no podium, just a microphone in hand. The crowd went silent. He stood for a moment scanning the crowd, then said, "Do not cheer for me. Cheer for the children who go to school, without roofs, for the mothers who still sing. After loss, for the youth who believe change begins with them." No one clapped. No one moved because hearts were too full. Within hours, the video of Traoré's speech hit every major platform. But it wasn't just his words. It was the tears he let fall mid-speech when he spoke of his brother. "He died to give me life. Now, I live to give others hope." It was the moment he called out by name. The orphans, the farmers, the teachers, the soldiers, the dreamers, many of whom he had met in just the past few days. And then he said this, "I am not your hero. I am your echo. I am the sound of your forgotten voices." The world paused. Influencers reposted it. News outlets translated it. Children reenacted it at school. Even the singer who mocked him shared the video with one caption, "I thought I was the star. Turns out I was in the crowd." When history spoke in 1 week, Traoré became not just a leader, but a symbol not by force, but by heart. That night, the skies broke and a rain poured over Ouagadougou, as if the heavens themselves wept. Still thousands stood outside the palace gates, quiet, soaked, waiting. Traoré came out in the rain. No umbrella, just a blanket over his shoulders, and a girl by his side. It was Mariam, the girl with the torn notebook. She held a microphone trembling and said, "He said he'd sit with me in class. He did more. He gave us hope again." The crowd clapped softly, then louder, then thundered tears, and rain blended across faces, and right there, with the entire world watching, Ibrahim Traoré whispered a vow, "As long as I live, I will never let your dreams get wet again." The screen fades to black. Dear viewers, if this story touched you, if your heart felt what the people felt, If your eyes held tears, if your soul found hope again, then don't just scroll. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, drop a comment below telling us, what would you do if you had a mic like Trey? Let's flood this comment section with respect. Let's echo his voice across the world, because sometimes the quietest man changes everything. Thank you for watching.